His son had just died when he started writing this book. And now you can see the onus of the author and why he's writing this. The questions of a man wrestling with the realities of life and faith, the reality of undeniable good and godliness, coupled with the decay of humanity, and the question directed not to men but to God, their creator. And the question is why? Why?
And now the man who should, he believed, have been exalted above everyone in the whole world, that man, instead of receiving the glory that was his due, was suddenly degraded and dishonored. What for? Who had judged him? Who could have decreed this? Those were the questions that wrung his inexperienced and virginal heart. He could not endure without mortification, without resentment, even, that the holiest of holy men should have been exposed to the jeering and spiteful mockery of the frivolous crowd.
The Brothers Karamazov, Book 7, Chapter 1.
Verily, verily, I say unto you, unless a grain of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. John chapter 12, verse 24.
Night where there's something in the air. Not good. I've put off doing this novel in any way for over a year. When I started this program, this particular novel has always been in my heart, on my mind. It is, this is my favorite novel. There's other novels I would say that have really been a joy to read, and I kind of hold them in my radius of the feelings that those novels gave me, the ideas maybe that resonates around the author and what they brought out on the platform. But this particular novel, it's hard to explain. It really dissected me as a person. It is page after page of different angles. It is Brother Karamozov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. It's a murder mystery. It's a murder of a man who really is. It seems to be an evil person when you get inside the character of the father. Boy, it sure at first makes some connections to people you've probably met that I have met. It fills in the blanks of their thought process and narcissism. But it doesn't take long until you as the reader see it, even a little bit of yourself in the father. And certainly in all three brothers in reading this, it is just, it is a direct pathway to the inner thoughts, at least of me, reading these brothers. And it is usually the most stinging aspects of our private thoughts, put on paper, displayed through these three brothers. And, I just find the novel so challenging. And, like I said, it's a marathon. It's a really long book. And there's no breaks. There's no breaks from this experience of the book saying to you, there's someone else, at least in the world with pen and paper, that knows the things you're ashamed of that you thought of. The reason I picked this section of the book, and like I said, there's so many. It's my favorite novel. So I could have talked about this all year. But this is not the most famous aspect of the book. It really is almost a side note of something that happened. But in the main character, brother, the youngest brother, Alyosha, it's a turning point in his Christianity. It's a turning point in his understanding of the world. It is an understanding that he is gaining through a really hard situation for him. He has a mentor, Father Zosima, who in the book really exemplifies Christian understanding, Christian love, and relationship in the flesh. of a mentor, of someone who he really knew that God had put in his life to help guide him. And upon this man's demise, and in his passing, there is in Russian culture, in Orthodox Russian culture, Christianity, there's a belief that the remains, the body of saints, of men who lived great lives, women who lived great lives, there would be some miracle after death having to do with their remains. Certainly you've heard of people having, even body parts of saints, a lock of their hair or whichever, and these things perform miracles. But also the body itself, there was this measurement of their goodliness in life, of how fast the corruption of the actual corpse would take place, in meaning that the longer decay stayed away, the more saintly the life would have been on the other side of death. Well, Father Zosima's emitting of that corruptible smell was faster than natural. And at first there was in the community a little bit of a denial of it, but there's everyone starting to notice. I mean, this is within the day, hours. And by the end of the day, it was undeniable. And by the end of the next day, it had spread through the community that not only this had happened, but Father Zosima's life had now been tinged by saying that he was a false teacher. And all of his critics really grasp onto this occurrence to reshape the narrative of what his life of love and caring and guidance meant, and that he was false. He wasn't strong enough. He wasn't, iron-handed enough. And Alyosha, his closest young man and follower, this was a crisis of faith for Alyosha. And the epitaph of the whole book, Brothers Karamozov, is the John 12:24, that unless a grain of wheat fall to the earth and die, it remains just a single grain of wheat. But if it dies in the earth, it becomes many. This idea of the intertwining that we experience in life, and the crisis of faith that Alyosha felt, of the undeniable power of God in a man's life, and the undeniable feeling that the words and teaching of this man had of love and caring and forgiveness and long suffering, coupled with this, undeniable example of he was just a man. And even after his death, there's this sign of corruption, the flesh, the body dying, and the smell that it emits. And this stuck with me because, like I said in this book, the reason this book is my favorite is because Dostoevsky has a way of coming in your living room and saying, hey, forget all the pretending. I want to talk about your experience, your real life experience. And Bobby Anderson, your real life Christian experience, you tell me that it's not this. You tell me that you haven't met great men and great women and tried to emulate that and in your relationship with Christ. And in that, you still find the taint of flesh. When I read this book, not to give you any details or names, I had certain people on these pedestals of not idol, but I knew they were great people. And the more you intertwine with human beings, there is never meet your heroes. There's just this inevitability of the recognition of flesh. And this was my experience. And reading this, I identified as boy, Dostoevsky really has a way of grabbing you aggressively. The olfactory smell, the sense, of smell it's almost taboo in culture. And certainly, the body of a deceased person is very taboo in American culture. I mean, there's there's a whole system to deal with the departed and quickly. And it's not just for sanitary reasons. It's because us as a society are really uncomfortable with the upfront knowledge of demise, and of decay. And that the flesh is the flesh. And as much as we like to remove this earthly vessel from all the other challenges that we see throughout nature and everything else, we are certainly chained and attached to it. And we like to preserve that illusion. But the book pulls it away. And it says, look at this closely, and look at the expectation that we have of godly things to be so removed from godly creation. And like I said, he's knocking on the door. He's in the living. Dostoevsky, he's talking to me in this moment, because I read the examples of all of the Bible examples, and they're undeniably human beings, their flesh, every single one of them. Their problems are on display. But for some reason, when I translated that into my real life, I really have this expectation of perfection among people and among the church and among my experience. I don't find it. Now, why did Dostoevsky do this? And when I found this out, it turned the volume up to 11. While Dostoevsky writing this book, just before he began writing this book, the main character, like I said, is Alyosha. But in Russian, they have 3 or 4 different names. His real name is Alexei Fedorovich, and he was named after another Alexei Fedorovich, and that was Fyodor Dostoevsky's son, who had just died of epilepsy inherited from Dostoevsky. His son had just died when he started writing this book. And now you can see the onus of the author and why he's writing this. The questions of a man wrestling with the realities of life and faith, the reality of undeniable good and godliness, coupled with the decay of humanity, and the question directed not to men, but to God, their creator. And the question is, why? Why? Alyosha, in the novel, is at a crossroads at this event, and he takes the wrong turn. He denies his faith and says he's going to go get, he's going to go make some bad decisions because of this event. Dostoevsky is looking at the death of his son and saying, what good can come of it? And he comes up with John 12:24, unless this one wheat of a grain of kernel falls to the ground and dies, it stays the one wheat. But in the earth, it creates new things. And Alyosha takes the wrong turn because of an offense, because of an understanding, even though it's on display around us, that there is holiness and worldliness intermingled in everything. And that we cannot put our faith in that intermingling, but yet in the creative we look, we trust, we have faith, and these things, these falling to the earth, these kernels dying, these situations of children passing, and mentors failing, and God not stepping in and stopping the decay of the world. These situations put us at this crossroads. And Alyosha takes the wrong turn, but it is because the people around him that he makes this decision to go the wrong way. They know this is not what his heart wants to be doing. They know he's a broken man, and they help put him back on the track. And that situation brings Grushenka, a woman of ill repute, into the walk, into an idea that her life could change, and faith. It ends up being an example to both his brothers, Ivan, who has lost the faith long ago through intellect, Dmitri, who is just a slave to his own passions, and Alyosha. This situation, this grain falling to the earth and dying, it produces a whole domino effect. And so when I read this book, it's been a year. You now know my favorite novel, Brothers Karamazov. And when I read it, I actually get a little anxious before, even if I'm going to pick up a section, because I know that if you spend time alone with this author, you are going to be, you're going to be challenged. You're going to be dissected. He knows these ideas and these preconceived, I remember being a child and saying, maybe we all did this. If I, make it to the next tree, before that car passes, whichever, then God loves me. Or, these ideas, these preconceived, like we just, pull them almost out of thin air. And maybe in our adulthood and when the stakes are a little bit higher, we put a little too much weight on these preconceived ideas that from childhood have come to this example of Alyosha saying, because this body succumb to the natural forces of life, that God isn't real. And the challenge is to look at my life and my experience with God, and how many times have I drawn these imaginary lines in the sand? If I'm not exalted at church, well, then God doesn't love me. If something doesn't happen that I'm supposed to have happen or should achieve or get that promotion, or someone falls in love with me, or if I get sick, if I have challenges in my marriage, if my kids, make me want to wring my hair out at times. If the path isn't straight and easy, then God, you're not real. But it's on these diversions. It's on these hard moments. It's on these grains falling to the earth, where we get to find out, what decision do we make? What do I really believe? Alyosha found out he was living the life of another man. He was living life in the shadow of a great man, Zosima. And when that shadow no longer cast itself on his life, and he was made bare to the light of this world, he found things lacking. And thank God for the light shining on the things that we lack. Unless a grain fall to the earth and die. It's interesting that the Bible uses wine so prevalently, and in the New Testament, the new wine, and bring it is, and the first miracle Jesus performed, turning the water into wine. In that, wine is not fresh fruit. It is not a fruit in its heyday, in its most beautiful, miraculous form. It's actually a decaying. It's actually that falling to the earth, and the natural decomposition that are subject to all natures, making this thing of wine. And this, I believe, is a foreshadowing of the cross itself. This falling to the earth, this death, and this rebirth. Brothers Karamozov, I wish you luck. I love you. I'll see you in 7 days. Bring it on Monday.